Thanks for staying tuned. You're still watching Niger Delta Today. Well, delving straight into the conversation of the day. Now, 2025 Akwa Ibom Electricity Summit had state officials, private sector leaders, and experts brainstorming solutions to tackle one of the most persistent challenges, steady power supply. Now, Governor Moino has promised decisive action, but the real question is, can these policies translate into stable, affordable electricity for the people? Let's get into it with our guest, Special Assistant to the Governor, New Media, Amanamhillary Umo-Udofia, PhD. Welcome on the program.
Thank you, Savior, and good to be back, Jennifer. And this happens to be my third time speaking on this, so
yes,
I think it's so dear to my heart.
Well, I mean, considering how important the conversation is, and with the recent activity of the governor, it's only important that we revisit it and see what this lofty plans that the state government has can be translated and brought to life, breathe life into it.
yeah,
So,
and
Jennifer?
especially concerning the fact that we're all talking about entrepreneurial development here and there, digital literacy, and most importantly, electricity or power is one key aspect. But let's begin by understanding your overall review of, okay, let's hold on to that thought. Let's take a listen to the governor during the Electricity Summit as some of the resolutions that were made during that summit.
The Akwa Ibom vision is ambitious, but it is eminently achievable. It will require discipline, transparency, and the support of the generality of the people. It will require those entrusted with leadership in this sector to act with integrity and resist the temptation to politicize electricity supply. Our vision in Akwa Ibom for total electricity access is anchored on a simple principle. Electricity must not be seen as a luxury. It is a fundamental enabler of modern life. When a rural health clinic has steady power, lives are saved. When our farmers can process and store their produce, incomes rise. When our artisans have reliable energy, productivity soars. We now have in place a state electricity policy 2024 and a state electricity law 2025. These are not just documents, they are compass that will guide every decision and every investment we will make. We have agreed from the point, the action plan that the SSG read, we have agreed to set up 2 critical institutions within the next 1 month. The Akwa Ibom State Electricity Regulatory Commission to provide fair tariffs, transparent licensing, and independent oversight, and the Akwa Ibom State Electrification Agency to deliver electricity access to our towns, villages, and underserved communities. Like I said, this will be within the next 1 month. It can be tomorrow, it can be next week, but the timeline will not exceed 1 month, and they will be made up of pure professionals. This is not politics. But let me use this opportunity, therefore, to invite all qualified technical personnel with skills to apply for employment through our RISE portal.
Indeed, we've heard from the governor, and now we've also, well, let me first get your overall impression of the Electricity Summit that was just concluded here in the States.
Okay, first, I'll start from the fact that for me, it was a promise kept. The fact that His Excellency had made a promise December 2024 during the EXCO, ministerial briefing and end of year review. That was when the discussion came up, and he propped up the idea of having a power summit. And then sometime in August, we had that the EXCO also took action where I came on the same program to discuss about that. And then a week to the summit itself, we had one of the defining, one of the defining achievements. That was a roundtable in Abuja with the Rural Electrification Agency, where the government signed an MOU with that agency of the federal government to, all seeking one thing, to seek to deliver power to the underserved communities, and especially communities that were not captured in the national grid. And then you now have the summit itself. For me, my assessment is that this is the first time as a state we're having a deliberate discussion, a deliberate conversation on how to tackle the challenges, within the power sector. And that process, the discussions, if, the persons that were there can attest to the fact that it was a frank discussion, asking the right questions, because every leader must know what is wrong for you to bring on the solutions. If you want to say you want to carry out an intervention, it is when you can do a proper diagnosis. And that is why you could hear the governor ask and say, despite the chunk of investments we've made as a state, in improving and perhaps providing the infrastructures, why have we not seen the concomitant effect in terms of the distribution and supply enjoyed by Akwa Ibomites? And understand the fact that, critical to the Arise agenda itself, if you want to create jobs, you want to drive entrepreneurship, you want to power your infrastructures, you need clean energy. It must be constant, it must be reliable. The small scale businesses, at the end of the day, most of the profits they would have made, is lost in terms of, powering, generating state. That's why you hear the governor say, we have come to a time and a point as a state where electricity should no longer be considered a luxury. So my impression about the summit, a promise kept to the Akwa Ibom people, and I believe and I'm convinced that the action plans that came out as an outcome of that summit would be to the benefit of Akwa Ibom people.
Let's really look at the action plans. And we understand in 2013, when the privatization plan for NEPA came into board, there were hopes expressed. And over the years, we've seen how epileptic the power sector has become. Of what impact would you think that the action plans here would really have on the people? Okay,
really, if you heard one of the presentations made by Mr. Yoekpo, if I'm not mistaken, one of the presentations he made, he had tried to share lessons from that process. And some of the things that, that maybe plagued the process from achieving the original intention is sought to have. He said in his words that it is less of discussions, but more about the political will to carry out, to implement the outcome and implement the timelines that you have. And so I think there was even a joke he made that perhaps if he had maybe gave the governor the mic when he was asking those questions, perhaps the governor would have been saying a yes and a yes and a yes. So at the national level, yes, I admit the fact that, we had hopes as a country, but it looks like, the more we have the hope, the more the hope was dashed. And what has the federation, what has the federal government done about that? Is that itself, the discos and the GenCos, look at the level of, I wouldn't want to go much in depth in terms of the administrative efficiencies of the privatization, the privatized companies that took over from NEPA itself and all of. I wouldn't like to go into much of that. But there is one thing that the federal government has done which gave need for this very, will I say, reforms within the power sector. In states like Enugu, Abia, already recording successes, and the governor was honest enough to call them to say, yes, we don't need to go to Germany to go and learn. We can learn from a neighboring state. If there are things that they have done right, maybe they're not perfect yet, but we can begin to copy from the little successes. And one thing that the federal government did, which I want to take us back on that, is that the alteration of the Constitution, the fifth amendment, and then you talk about the Electricity Act of 2023, is what gave the foundation to say, fine, over the years we've tried at the federal level to see that when power was in the exclusive list, and then distribution especially was on the exclusive list, and that did not give us the results that we so desire. What happens? Every society would always be determined to tackle these challenges headlong. So the solution that the National Assembly had to come up was that we needed to amend that act. And with that act and the passage into law, that is what has given liberation to states, not only to generate power, because a state like Akwa Ibom, we have the Ibom Power, the Ibom Power Company. We generate the power. We do not have the license to distribute. I did say that even the license that was given to, what we call the initial Akwa Ibom State Utilities Company, the license was to cover areas that are not on the national grid. It wasn't for, it wasn't for the normal areas that are already in the national grid. So you generate the power, you send it back to, to the national grid for it to be distributed back to your state. And what happens? The infrastructures itself, some of them are very old. I'm talking about not Akwa Ibom infrastructures. I'm talking about the infrastructures at the national. You keep hearing about there is a phrase, the 132
kV line.
kV line and all of that. So it is not an Akwa Ibom thing. It wasn't an Akwa Ibom challenge. We've made enormous investment. I can't repeat this enough. That if you place Akwa Ibom side by side with other states in the sub-region, we are the highest within the southeast region in terms of investment, but with little or no impact of that investment. And that is why the governor is saying that we must now see how to maximize this investment to the betterment of Akwa Ibom people.
Well, Mr. Amanamhillary, would like to get into the details of what is truly going on here. We heard the governor speaking about that the process is going to be completely devoid of politics. It is going to be as transparent as possible, and persons who are going to be brought into the sector would be on merit. And he has been repeating that on different fora. Now, here you are speaking of how this ties to the national. Do you see a pattern here? What is the situation that is truly impacting the successes that we're supposed to be recording at this time in the power sector?
Well, the truth is that we cannot exist as a state in isolation. We need to do whatever reforms is going to be in close partnership with the federal government. The foundation has been given. Now, with the act which I talked about that is passed into law by the National Assembly and signed into law by Mr. President, that act has given states, has taken power from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. So states can now distribute their power. That is the first achievement which we need to applaud the federal government for, whether we like it or not. Because if power distribution was still within the the reserve of the federal government, maybe we just keep on discussing.
And what about that licensing clause you talked about?
And all of it. I said what?
The licensing clause you talked about, where the federal government still has a way of influencing what happens at the state level in terms of distribution.
I wouldn't like to say influencing. Is that the federal government provides a policy direction, and it is now for states to domesticate this policy direction, in line with the peculiarities. Every state have the peculiarities of development. So within the peculiarities of investment as a state, you take stock, and then within those, the direction that the federal government has given, you can now enact a policy. That is why we now have a policy as a state. We now even have what we call the Akwa Ibom State Electricity Act that was signed into law by the governor in January this year. We also have the Akwa Ibom State Electricity Policy, which is going to be like the framework for which we are going to implement the reforms we're talking about.
Well, the governor made mention of the agencies beginning in a month's time to begin to implement these resolutions. How feasible is that, a month?
Well, there are timelines that are short term, and the other timelines that are long term. There are things that we could do within a month with the legal backing of having that act. That act already empowers for the establishment of a regulatory commission and also the electrification agency, which is going to be like the arm of government to drive the process. Yeah, what the regulatory commission does is just like what we have the national electricity, the regulation company, commissioner at the national level, which is going to, grant licenses, perhaps, grant also tariffs and how to operate. Because there must be some sort of control where nobody just comes in and it becomes a free for all, and anybody can do anything he chooses to do. So there are key components of the reforms which this government has emphasized on. That we must, first of all, maximize our infrastructures and then look at other avenues that which we can use to generate power. We have, we can generate power from hydro sources within the state. There are possibilities and assessment that can be possible. There are also the issue of like the Ibom power plant, which is powered by gas. So there are other ventures like that, but there are also even more renewable sources we can generate power from. That's talking about having mini grids that can serve, some immediate smaller localities and all of that. So these are the things that the governor has done. So being feasible in 1 month, the governor has said that openly. It is not what anybody can counteract or begin to say that it is maybe some permutations. He says that within 1 month that we are going to have the setup of the 2 agencies of government that will drive the process. There are other things that can happen in 10 months, others for 15 months if you look at that action plan.
But establishing the agency is one aspect. We all talk of decaying infrastructure. The 132 kV line, Aba line, there's always a discussion of the decay in that infrastructure and how that has impact. What plan does the state government have to ensure that all the decaying infrastructures are taken care of such that the people will also get the benefit? Is wanting to invest and get the things done, but it's another for the infrastructure to be able to feed the community.
Let me take you on from the fact that the Port Harcourt distribution company, distribute power to 4 states. Port Harcourt, River State itself, Cross River, Akwa Ibom, I think, which other state? I think it should be 4 states. Bayelsa State. So we have 4 states that are being saved by Fed. But the challenges over time has been that, for example, I have said we've invested heavily, as I said, on infrastructures. The governor even made mention about the issue of we need to now share, what we call own shares in some of these distribution companies, because if we have invested and put in money, we should also have a say in terms of earning profit back. So there are infrastructures that are maybe beyond the Akwa Ibom line. But what the governor is concentrating is that we want to see how we can push the power generated by Ibom Power Company to serve our market first. We should be able to serve our people first before we think of sending it back to to the national grid for it to be supplied to other areas.
We've seen policies, plenty of policies launched before, still regarding the power sector and how to make it more efficient.
In Akwa Ibom?
But what makes it, well, maybe not in Akwa Ibom, but what makes it different this time? Because even in Akwa Ibom, conversations around ensuring that there's more electricity and it's more available for the people and businesses to thrive have been ongoing. What makes it different this time around?
What makes it different this time around is that the person driving the process is different. It is very difficult to have leaders in this country who will come out to say that we have a problem and admit and say that we have a problem. I think we should give the governor kudos for that. He is one person that says, I'm not perfect. Where I have done well, at least admit I've done well. Where the areas I've not done well, say it gently. You don't need to abuse anybody. You can come out and criticize. And if the things you have to say are things that can enable the process, enrich the process, you bring it up, we can listen to those conversations. So the character of the person in question is one person who is very, very frugal in taking decisions that bother the state, and somebody who is keen on efficiency, keen on issues of performance. So if he was not ready to do that, I don't think the governor will have pinned or be part of anything he knows will not work out.
No, let's still hop on.
And he said at the closing ceremony that if this fails, he said you should hold him responsible.
Let's still hop on what the governor says. I mean, that's what the aim of this conversation is. He says he's inviting private partnership, the federal government, and even finance investors to come in and support this cause. But then investors may be scared of, the usual bottlenecks that come with investments like this. What do you think are those steps that the state government can take towards ensuring that potential investors are assured that if they were to put their money here and invest in the power sector, electricity in Akwa Ibom State, their monies are safe?
So the first some of the discussions are the discussions in the summit itself was we talked about the various investment opportunities that exist within the power sector in Akwa Ibom, which any investor can come into leverage on. But on the issue of ensuring that there are no bottlenecks, is that I've always said that when you have strong institutions driving the process, it is not about who is the leader at that time. But so far you have strong institutions to drive the process, whoever comes in, whoever wants to avail those platforms, is that naturally the issue of sustainability, the issue of efficiency would always be addressed.
But it seems as though strong institutions are not our strong footing in the country.
In the country, not in Akwa Ibom.
We have strong people.
I can't. You can also say that in Ethiopia. We kind of failed to admit the fact that we were not perfect as a country, we're not perfect as a state, but from time to time we're trying to see how to address the challenges. So I wouldn't come here to say,
so in Akwa Ibom we have strong institutions.
We don't have strong institutions at the federal level, and then admit and say that we have that in Akwa Ibom, because I've said that we cannot exist in isolation. But the truth of the matter and the reality of the moment is the fact that this government, this administration is determined, to ensure that we chart a course forward in the power sector in Akwa Ibom State, and he's determined to do so.
Well, let's say all of these plans come to fruition. Let's look at the affordability, because the people will be more concerned as well as in terms of affordability, getting meters and having power at affordable rates, even some estimated areas as well. How do you think that measures in place will ensure that the power distributed to the people will be affordable?
I mean, especially when you look at the situation of power.
I was thinking that you also talk about the issue of power theft, which is also a conversation I like to drive from time to time. There was also part of presentations a review of the metered areas, the meter coverage. Because the challenge you have with the estimated billing is that whether you have power or not, you get to pay. And sometimes perhaps the estimations is far above the consumption. So the governor has emphasized on the issue of affordability, that if we're using our resources to invest, to generate the power, certainly it's going to be affordable for our Akwa Ibom people to pay and use the power itself. But I wanted to raise the conversation of power theft, of people who bypass power, because it is a conversation that is part of the problem. And we must be honest enough to have the conversation. We can't keep on holding government accountable, and then where there are areas where we need to hold citizens accountable, we do not hold citizens accountable. Governance itself is a collective business. When government will do the things they need to do, the people itself must also determine and say that are ready to do the things they need to do.
What is the role of the people when we talk about power?
The role of the people
now?
is that the summit itself was an inclusive. Let me start from the summit itself. If you open up discussions and you want to hear other views, it means you want to enrich your process. The governor would have said, okay, let me set up a technical team, go and do your assessment, bring on an action plan for me, let me implement. But he chose not to do that because he wanted to enrich the process and perhaps make it more broader so that we can have perhaps learn from other experiences and the things we need to avoid. So that is one aspect of inclusion. The other aspect of the inclusion is that the governor has just said here that that we are going to recruit a team that is competent. Do you know what he's going to do? That's the portal matter. That's what I'm going to come on, because people keep saying that why is the governor shouting about talking about portal at every point? It is the portal that will give us a team that we can recruit without preponderances or considerations of which party they belong to or where they come from. So long as they are capable enough to deliver on the agenda that the governor has for Akwa Ibom people, they will definitely be brought on board. And then, moreover, from time to time, this action plans and the timelines we've provided that will be subjected to review, whether there is need to discuss and get feedback from the people. Definitely governments will do that.
I would like to take you up on that power theft thing. And shouldn't there be a way that, we're talking of power, electricity, shouldn't there be a way that these thefts or these thieves can be tracked and blocked completely from, there should be measures somewhat way. Aren't there plans set out to ensure that people who intentionally try to steal power, do not get the access.
Well, the Electricity Act has stipulated penalties for such offences. We can't run away from that, because when we talk about the good side, let's talk about the side that people will say is unpalatable, so that maybe tomorrow nobody falls into that, that trap. Or let me not use the word trap. Nobody will say, I did not know about it, or begin to feign ignorance. Is that beyond the issue of theft, where the act is addressed, is also the issue of vandalism, where people consciously, vandalize. I wouldn't want to mention names of places. I go around Akwa Ibom, and when I drive around, one of the things I try to do is that I try to assess a set of public infrastructures. And one of the things you notice around is that you see power infrastructures being vandalized, not by spirits, but by human beings. When you do that, or when that happens in a certain locality, it takes the government backward, it takes the people backward. And so we must now own the process. Talking about what Xavier had asked me, where do the people come in? Is that the people must own the process. Public infrastructures within your localities belong to you, belongs to everybody, because it is the monies that we generate as a government. That's what we use to fund those infrastructures. So we must ensure that we protect them from vandals. But when need be that people are being caught, there is a place, for such matters.
Well, there were other stakeholders who spoke during the summit, from Abia, Cross River, Enugu. They all converged. And do you think that there are insights shared during that summit, perhaps that could also lend credence and support Akwa Ibom as it gets into executing this particular lofty dream of electricity for all in Akwa Ibom State?
I sat through the conversations. I sat through all the presentations. I'm very peculiar about that of Abia State and Enugu, because I think Abia and Enugu have really gone a bit far. Let me not say a bit far. They've recorded things on ground. And so, but they were honest enough to even say that maybe they have not even, gotten it perfect. But at least they were able to do one or two things. The level of distribution in Abia State at the moment has increased in terms of access to power, in terms of the hours that power is available. Enugu State is one of the key lessons that His Excellency was very keen on. And we had the governor himself, who was represented by the ECG, come talk to Akwa Ibom people. If that partnership wasn't there, I don't think they would like to be part of the summit itself. That's one. So they were able to tell us the things they were able to do right. The fact that you must, I think, the man who represented the Bayelsa State governor, he said he kept praying that the governor must have the courage to do, to do the right thing, because along the line, interest will come. It is expected that it will come.
You have to hurt some people.
And definitely the governor is saying that we can be friends, we can smile, but when it has to do with things that will bother the generality of Akwa Ibom people, he said he's going to go with public interest before personal friendship.
So that is where that issue of politics comes into play. That there are people who have keen interest in the power sector, and because of that, it is difficult for it to function as effectively as it's supposed to function.
It is not difficult to function in Akwa Ibom yet. So, and it's never going to be difficult.
But don't you foresee some level of sabotage in between the power people?
There are strong frameworks of government being put in place. When I said the people who are going to sabotage you, if you are saying that I told the people that we must begin to own the process, is that who is going to sabotage the process? It's going to emanate from people, not from spirits. So I'm saying on this program that we shouldn't be pessimistic on any level. I would say that we should be able to trust government, to keep to its promise. Where you feel that government has not kept to the promise, that is where you can begin to say, X, Y, Z, and then we can do some stock, stock taking, and then look at the areas we need to adjust. For me, I always work as a person. I welcome criticisms because it helps me look at things from other perspectives that is different from mine. So let's believe and trust. We are convinced that this is not going to be sabotaged. We are not pessimistic on any level. And if there are cases anybody wants to sabotage the process, they know there are strong mechanisms being put in place to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Well, we're talking about the metrics that citizens should use towards ensuring that they hold government accountable. I mean, lofty promises have been made, and the people are now hoping that they will be expecting deliverables from the state governor now, who has spoken so loftily about this particular dreams. What do you think are those metrics that the state's people should use towards ensuring that they hold the government accountable and say, okay, you promised us this, and you even gave time frame?
There is a policy, there is a framework, which is what we call, that's the, if you look at the expected outcomes, part of what the governor has said, talked about, which you played some minutes ago, is the fact that he said in 1 month, let me give you one metric. You know, if he said in 1 month that we're going to put up 2 agencies to drive the process, we should leave that to 1 month. At the end of 1 month, you can begin to say maybe if there are things that citizens will begin to complain about. What we should avoid is where government has not even done anything yet, and then we begin to cast suspicions on what government wants to do. I don't think it's being fair to the government, or it's being fair to the government.
But it's always necessary to hold government accountable. Let me put it outrightly to you. Within what space of time should people expect to have some form of steady power?
And affordability too.
And affordable power.
Now, I can't give you a definitive timeline on that. Why am I saying that? Is that there are things that we need to address. When you have the regulatory commission come on board and the agency itself, the issue of licenses will begin to be looked at, and the bottlenecks involved. For example, if you want to say you want to talk about administrative processes to grant licenses and maybe undertake some things you need to do. It might take some few months, but the governor has said that at least in 15 months, we should begin to see the impact of these discussions and the summit, come to fruition in terms of direct supply, direct benefit to Akwa people. So, but I can't give a definitive timeline.
Well, we'll be checking
what we need to do is that we should take the items one at a time. Ensure that each of the outcomes and timelines succeeds. That is where we can begin to build up the process. I did say some minutes ago on the sister station, development processes is not like paracetamol, where you say someone has headache, and then so when you give paracetamol, that is over. Is that maybe a day or two afterwards, the person can have stomach ache, and you need to administer something else. So there is no definitive development process. Development itself arises from that at every point you have a challenge, or there are things that will come up in the development process. You must be able to be proactive enough to come up with measures to address that particular challenge.
All right, and in 15 months, we will...
I just have a parting shot for you, and I want us to dock with the humane and human angle to all of this. Does it make you cringe when you see households, small businesses having to pay very exorbitant bills? And with this dream of the governor, do you see him tackling that particular issue head-on?
Xavier, I don't think you're being fair to me. When you talk about households, are you excluding me?
Well, you're included.
I'm also a victim. I'm also a victim. One of the most frustrating things that has happened over time is that I think for about getting to a year now, you see them come out with estimated bills of 80,000, 90,000. And if I want, because someone like me, I'm very detailed. I can keep records. I'm someone that in 31 days, I can decide to record of every single day in the week or every single day of that month, how many hours we got light. Sometimes you discover that maybe in a whole week, you can have maybe 60 hours of light in the whole week. Maybe that's about how many per day? Let me not exaggerate and say 60, maybe 35 hours. That is, they bring the light by 12 o'clock midnight, and they take the light by 5 in the morning. And all through the daytime, you won't have light. But at the end of the month, the bill is brought. The contrast was that sometime in July, we had steady supply for a whole 1 month. July this year. And the bill was the same.
The ulterior motives or the bill?
So you begin to ask questions. So the reality of the time is that the issue of power is affecting everybody. Affecting local businesses, affecting the rich, affecting those in rural communities.
All right.
And addressing this is not just about facing one sector of the state or one class of the state. is about what is critical to us as a people.
All right, Special Assistant to the Governor on new
I thought you were going to congratulate Akwa Ibom at 38 because that is very, very
Absolutely.
We started with that.
We started with that today.
Okay.
It's indeed a lofty achievement by the state, and we're hoping that Akwa Ibom has it good from today onward. Thank you very much, Special Assistant to the Governor of New Media, Amanamhillary Umo-Udofia, PhD. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for coming on Niger Delta
Thank
today.
you, Jennifer.
Well, we've come full square on Niger Delta today. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you again tomorrow for another fresh edition. My name is Xavier Robert.
And I am Jennifer Pius. To have a great day.